They were laughing at me, while my father's coffin was being lowered into the ground. I stood there in silence, fists clenched, as my uncles whispered behind my back. He's still jobless, right? Probably came for the free food. No wonder his dad never mentioned him in business. Just 4 lines in, and now it's your turn. Like, share, and subscribe if you've ever been underestimated. This story proves silent revenge hits hardest. The dirt hadn't even settled, and already they were circling like vultures. My cousins in their designer suits, my aunt with her fake tears and real diamonds, all pretending to mourn. But I saw the smirks. They knew my father had money. They also believed he died without leaving me a single dollar. I was the failure. Son. The one who didn't join the family business. The one who vanished for 5 years. No one knew what I'd been doing, and that's exactly how I wanted it. Still chasing those silly app ideas? My cousin Derek sneered, loud enough for everyone to hear. He was the golden boy, CEO of my dad's firm now, or so he thought. People chuckled. Even the lawyer looked uncomfortable. I didn't say a word, just adjusted my cheap suit and looked at the gravestone one last time. You told me not to trust them, Dad. You were right. Back at the mansion, things got uglier. My relatives laughed louder now. Jokes about me living in a basement. My aunt whispered to a family friend, "Poor thing, he'll probably ask for a loan." After this, that's when the lawyer stood up. Everyone went quiet. "The will," he said, unfolding a thick envelope. "Per Mr. Richard Bennett's wishes, this will be read in front of all family members." I didn't blink. Derek leaned back, arms crossed, already celebrating. The lawyer started reading. First, the properties. All given to the Bennett family. Trust. Derek smirked. Next, the cars. Given to charity. Jewelry, artwork. Donated. Derek sat up straighter, confused now. Then the lawyer paused. And now, the final clause. Everyone leaned in. In recognition of his unwavering integrity and hard work outside this family, I leave 100% of my personal savings, amounting to $48 million and full ownership of my tech investment portfolio, to my son, Jason Bennett. The room froze. Forks dropped. My aunt gasped. Derek stood up, face pale. I slowly got up, looked around, and smiled for the first time that day. "Don't worry," I said. "I won't be needing that loan after all." The silence in the room was louder than the laughter at the funeral. Derek's lips parted like he wanted to speak, but no words came out. My aunt clutched her pearls like she'd seen a ghost. My uncle stammered, "That can't be right. Jason didn't even work with his father." I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of the moment sink into every corner of that over-decorated living room. For the first time in years, I had their full attention. No mocking, no whispers, just pure shock. The lawyer cleared his throat, flipping to the last page. "There's one more part," Derek muttered. "What now?" The lawyer read, "A private letter to Jason to be handed over after the reading. Mr. Bennett was very specific." He handed me the envelope. My name was handwritten on it. My father's handwriting. I opened it, hands steady. "Son, I know they laughed at you. I know they called you a failure. But I also knew you were building something they could never understand. Quiet power. Real value. You didn't need to prove anything to them. But if you're reading this, you've earned your moment." I folded the letter, tucked it into my jacket, and stood up. "You all assumed I disappeared, that I failed. But while you were playing business, I was building something real." Derek jumped in. "What are you talking about? You never even had a job." I smiled. "You're right, I didn't have a job because I had a company." They blinked. I built a software startup in silence. My dad was my first investor. We never told anyone. He didn't want you leeches near it. We scaled. Fast. Sold last month for $120 million. Gasps filled the room. Even the lawyer raised his eyebrows. "But I didn't stop there," I added. "The tech portfolio he left me, I'm already doubling it. You see, while you were laughing at funerals, I was making sure I'd never need to beg at family dinners. Derek's face twisted. You think this makes you better than us? I didn't answer. I just pulled out my phone, tapped it once, and the garage doors behind us slid open. Inside sat a custom black McLaren, shining like revenge. The entire room turned toward it. I drove here in silence, I said, but I'll leave making noise. As I stepped toward the door, I heard my uncle whisper to my aunt, Is he bluffing? That car alone costs more than our house. I turned slowly. You can come check the registration if you want. It's under Bennett Innovations LLC. No, the company you all said would fail. Their faces were cracking now. The smugness, gone. The pity, reversed. But it was Derek's trembling voice that made it perfect. You used Dad's money behind our backs? I raised an eyebrow. He gave me $20,000. That's it. I turned it into $120 million. What did you do with the millions he invested in your branch? Oh, right. The branch that's now bankrupt. He went red. My aunt blurted, But you didn't even show up for holidays, weddings, nothing. I laughed. Yeah, I was busy. Coding at 3 a.m., getting rejected by investors, sleeping in a rental car, while you were all popping champagne and calling me a loser. Everyone looked down. Not one person could hold my gaze. The lawyer, who had stayed silent until now, looked at Derek and said, By the way, Mr. Bennett didn't leave the company to you. He quietly transferred the controlling shares to Jason last month. The room spun. I stepped closer. So technically, you're working for me now. Derek's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. I turned to the lawyer. Is there anything else? He nodded. Just one thing. Your father asked to play a video if things got tense. He reached into his bag, pulled out a flash, drive, and plugged it into the TV. The screen lit up. My father appeared, sitting in his study, smiling. If you're watching this, he began, they're probably shocked. Good, they deserve it. Everyone froze. He continued, You all judged Jason without knowing what he was building. But he's the only one who understood value. Not just money, but people, time, integrity. That's why he earned everything. He paused. And if any of you think you can fight this in court, go ahead. I left receipts. The screen went black. I looked around. No one spoke. No one laughed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. As the screen faded to black, no one moved. The silence was thicker than ever. No fake sobs, no backhanded whispers, just pure defeat hanging in the air. Derek finally sat down, as if his legs couldn't hold the weight of his ego anymore. My aunt, who always called me the tech dropout, kept her eyes fixed on the ground like it held some kind of mercy. I walked over to the dining table, picked up one of the expensive glasses they were so proud of, and tapped it lightly. You know what's funny? I said, calm and steady. You all taught me exactly how not to live. You lied, you faked love, and you sold loyalty for status. My uncle tried to jump in. Jason, wait, we didn't mean... No, I cut him off. You did. You all... meant every laugh, every insult, every time you treated me like a failure because I didn't wear a tie or drive a BMW at 25. They looked embarrassed. Good. They should be. I continued. While you were building your lives on status, I was building mine on skills. That's why you needed connections. And I didn't. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A notification popped up. I swiped it open. Speak of the devil, I muttered. The company I sold just went public. My shares are now worth $190 million. My aunt gasped. My uncle blinked. Derek looked like he might throw up. I smiled. See, the thing about laughing at someone's funeral is, sometimes the dead leave behind ghosts. And mine just made me the richest person in this room, by far. The lawyer nodded. That concludes the will. Everything has been signed, witnessed, and transferred. I walked toward the door, but before leaving, I stopped and turned one last time. By the way, I said, I won't be attending the next family reunion. Derek scoffed bitterly. Afraid of more laughter? Smirked. No, I'll be too busy hosting mine, in my private jet. And with that, I walked out, leaving behind their silence, their stares, and their regret. As I stepped outside into the crisp evening air, the sky above the mansion had already started to darken. But for me, everything was just beginning to light up. The sound of the McLaren's engine roared to life behind me, echoing off the stone walls like a final declaration of victory. But before I got in, I pulled out my phone and sent one message. Initiate Phase 2. You see, what none of them knew was that the will was never the end. It was just the bait. 3 years ago, my father came to me in secret. He told me he was sick. Not just physically, but emotionally sick from watching his legacy rot in the hands of greedy, shallow people. He knew the company he built from scratch had become nothing but a playground for ego-driven relatives, especially Derek. He wanted to take it all back, but not with noise, with precision. We created a plan, together. While they mocked me, I was working behind the scenes. I launched a fake startup, just to test who in the family would try to steal it. Derek was the first to offer help, and the first to leak the idea to a competitor. We recorded everything. My aunt, the one crying, the loudest at the funeral, she was embezzling from my father's company's charity fund. We had bank statements, witness testimonies, even audio, all of it, compiled into a drive. A drive I had just handed over to a journalist 20 minutes before the will reading. And now, I watched from my car as a news alert popped up. Breaking. Multiple Bennett family members under investigation for fraud and corporate theft. Their faces would be all over the 8 p.m. broadcast, but it didn't stop there. The final twist? I never planned to keep the company. After reclaiming the controlling shares, I had already signed a deal to sell it to a global firm, a deal my father helped negotiate before he passed. The sale was scheduled to go live tonight. As I drove off, another notification popped up. Transaction complete. Transaction. Bennett Corp sold for $320 million. And just like that, the empire they thought they owned was gone. The legacy they thought they'd inherit? Stripped clean. But what I did next was something none of them could have predicted. I didn't. Pocket the money. I created the Richard Bennett Foundation, a fund named after my father, aimed at supporting young entrepreneurs who were laughed at, underestimated, or betrayed by their own. People like me. Because revenge wasn't about taking everything back. It was about making sure they could never do it to someone else. They laughed at me at my father's funeral. But now, they were being investigated, exposed, and erased from everything they tried to steal. And I was just getting started.